Iran's birth rate collapse is historic. What is the fastest a country has ever changed its mind about making babies? This is a story about a society fundamentally re-engineering its future. Iran holds the record for the fastest, most dramatic birth rate collapse. This isn't just a statistic. This is a story of how a nation of 92 million people slammed the brakes on its population growth so hard and so fast it shattered all precedents. A decline in fertility that took some European countries 300 years to achieve, Iran accomplished it in a single generation. This is a story of the world record that no one intended to set. So our story begins in 1979 with the Islamic Revolution. The new supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, had a grand vision. Facing a brutal war with Iraq and calling for the export of his revolution across the Middle East, he needed a human wave. The Ayatollah declared the family planning policies of the previous government a Western plot and put massive pressure on Iranians to breed more, to build a 20 million man army to defend the nation and confront its enemies. The message from the state was clear. Having more children was a sacred patriotic duty. So in 1982, Iran lowered the marriage age for girls, which was 18 years old in 1975, to 9 lunar years old, which is about 8 years and 9 months using Western solar calendars. So you basically have a subset of the population that was very much forced to create this new Iranian army, while the government and religious leaders applied pressure throughout the population to build up their 20 million man army. The government dismantled family planning clinics and celebrated large families as the national ideal. The results were immediate and explosive. By the 1980s, the total fertility rate was over 6.6. At its peak in 1985, Iran's population wasn't just growing, it was exploding, hitting an annual population growth of 4.5% in a single year, one of the highest the world has ever seen. By the late 1980s, the Iran-Iraq war was over, but the consequences of the baby boom were just beginning. The government looked at the numbers and saw not a powerful army, but an impending economic disaster. An enormous youth bulge was about to hit a job market that could not absorb it. So, in a complete 180, the exact same establishment that had championed the baby boom decided to execute one of history's most abrupt policy reversals. And what followed was a demographic event without precedent. The birth rates didn't just decline, it went into absolute freefall. To put it in perspective, it took the UK 95 years for their fertility rates to drop from over 6 children to below 3. Iran did it in just 9 years. This was faster than China's infamous one-child policy. Between 1980 and 2000, Iran achieved a 70% decline in its total fertility rate, from over 6.6 children per woman in 1980 to just 2.0 in 2000, a speed that is completely unprecedented over a 20-year span. And the state went on an all-out blitz. It established a network of thousands of health clinics offering free contraception. It created mandatory premarital counseling, where family planning was a central topic. And it enlisted the clerics to issue religious rulings endorsing vasectomies and tube tying. Contraceptive use soared to about 74% among married women, a rate comparable to most of the developed world. This was turbocharged by a revolution in female education. Female literacy rates were under 30% before the revolution, and they shot up past 85%, creating a generation of empowered women who chose to have smaller families. And the fertility rates in rural areas, once a staggering 8.1 births per woman, collapsed to just 2.1 in a single generation. By the 2010s, the sheer terrifying success of the program sparked a new panic, though. The leaders looked at the data from the record-breaking success and saw a future of empty schools and overflowing retirement homes. The median age in Iran in 1985 was just 17 years old and is now around 34 years old today, and it is on track to hit 43 by 2050, making Iran one of the fastest aging societies in the world. And this creates a profound national security paradox. The regime has ambitions of being a regional superpower. It funds proxies across the Middle East and engages in high-stakes military confrontations, like the recent direct missile and drone exchanges with Israel. But a nation that is aging this rapidly, with a shrinking pool of young men to recruit in a war and a smaller workforce to tax, cannot sustain such a costly foreign policy. That 20 million man army they once dreamed of is now getting old, with no replacement in sight. Projections warn that by 2050, a third of Iran's entire population could be over the age of 60. And of course, the result, the government tried to change course yet again. In 2021, it passed the Youthful Population and Protection of the Family Law, banning free contraception and outlawing vasectomies in the public system. But guess what? It is not working. The total fertility rate has continued to fall, hitting a record low of around 1.6 in 2024. In the year ending March 2025, the number of live births in Iran fell below 1 million for the first time since 1955, when the country's population was just a quarter of its current size. So why the failure? Because the government can't undo the social and economic reality it helped create. Young Iranians are facing crippling inflation, which stood at 38.7% in May 2025, and the youth unemployment rate is over 20%. The youth of Iran are not listening to the government's calls for more children. They are listening to their empty wallets. And here's the ultimate irony. The Iranian government engineered the fastest, most effective demographic revolution in modern history, and in doing so unleashed forces it can no longer control. It educated and empowered a generation of women, and now seems shocked that those women are making their own choices. And they are learning a lesson many nations have learned before. It is far easier to convince people to have fewer children than to convince them to have more in this modern world. They didn't just tap the brakes on population growth. They virtually guaranteed their birth rates never come back to replacement levels. And unfortunately, with a GDP of just about $4,500 per capita, they are a very long way from being a high-income nation, and seemingly they are destined for a population that will exist in a downward spiral of perpetual poverty, with some estimates showing their poverty rate as high as 75 to 80% of the entire population. Having a low fertility rate not only limits them economically in many respects, but it makes Iran far more vulnerable militarily, where they really can't afford to lose the relatively few young people it already has. And now, as Iran stares down their strategic rivals in ongoing conflicts and grapples with a rapidly aging society, they are dealing with the consequences of setting a world record they never wanted. The future of Iran is not a youthful revolutionary army, but a nation growing old, quiet, and facing a demographic destiny of decline. And it's a perfect showing that when governments try to invasively control their populations, the end results often backfire in spectacular ways. So how do you see Iran's collapsing birth rate impacting their long-term future? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing. This has been Blinded by Logic. Thanks for watching.